Hey, it's Emily.
And Neve, and we're the hosts of Rowan and Pine.
And we're here to try to lure you in like sirens to our feminist folklore, mythology, and dark history podcast.
We've covered everything from mermaids and sleep paralysis to midwifery magic and snow queens, usually through a feminist lens, because we can't help ourselves.
Yeah, it gets a bit ranty on our monthly main episodes, but then we keep it spooky, dark, and whimsical on our Pinecone shorts. Be sure to check out an episode after you finish this one and come say,
Yeah, folklore.
Canadian Creepies is recorded on the traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, under the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. These lands and waters have been cared for since long before Canada existed, and they remain deeply important to Indigenous communities today. As we tell stories about darkness, injustice, and memory, I want to acknowledge the very real histories of colonization, violence, and erasure that Indigenous peoples continue to endure. A land acknowledgement can't undo that harm, but it is a reminder to keep listening, learning, and supporting in truth and reconciliation in meaningful ways. We share these stories not to forget, but to shine light, always with respect for peoples and nations whose land we live on. Canadian Creepies covers true crime, dark history, and disturbing events. Some episodes may include graphic descriptions or sensitive subject matter. We do our best to handle every story with care and respect for those affected. That said, we sometimes use humor and sarcasm as a way to process heavy content, never to disrespect victims, survivors, or their families. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to the final installment of the 60 Scoop, the series that happens to be taking place in the summer.
Hence the name.
Hence the name.
Hence the name.
It's not meant to have any joyous sort of representation with it.
Fuck sunshine.
Fuck. I get burnt. I'm a redhead.
I'm so blonde and pale and pasty. I have no eyebrows. I'm so blonde.
Oh, I get the men's beard dye for my eyebrows.
I do tint them. I haven't done it in a while.
Yeah.
I need to do it.
I know, I gotta do mine again.
I was watching one of my TikToks and I was like, they're gone. I need to fix that.
This episode was researched by Mother Christine. We love Christine. We love Christine. She meticulously researches every episode for us, starting the middle of season 2, and it has changed the game for us.
Very much.
Thank you, Christine. Here are the references that Christine used. The Library and Archives of Canada. Native Adoption. The Indian Act 1876. Bill C-92, an act respecting First Nations, Inuit, and Métis children, youth, and families, 2020. The Davin Report, 1879. The Bryce Report, 1907. Project Gutenberg, archive.org, the final report of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada, Recollections of an Assiniboine Chief, 60 Scoop, that's the name of the article, newswire.ca, the 60 Scoop Healing Foundation, Raven Sinclair, the 60 Scoop Network, and a YouTube video called The 60 Scoop Ruling. Should we get right into it?
Let's dive.
Okay. The Native Child... I already stumbled on my words. The Native...
Well, if you listen to the last episode... I couldn't speak.
So. You could speak. You are a great speaker. Sometimes you just take creative liberties with the words that are there.
4 years old, you think I could read? Cannibal, cannabis.
Exactly. Same. Okay. The Native Child Caravan. In 1980, was that when you were born?
86. Thanks.
I'm also almost 40. That's the joke. Because I was born in 1990.
I just had my 40th birthday party.
Yeah. Okay. On Thanksgiving Day. Wait, when's your birthday again? July
15th.
Oh my God. I'm just realizing Ian, my ex-husband, July 25th, 1986.
Oh, wow.
Ian, my ex-husband, the father of my child.
Yes.
We get along well. That's why I'm allowed to mention him on this podcast.
They do, actually. I can vouch for that.
Okay. In 1980, on Thanksgiving Day, an estimated 1,000 people staged a protest in front of the Vancouver home of BC's Minister of Human Resources, Grace McCarthy. Ashamed it's a woman, proud of the people for protesting.
Yeah.
The majority of the protesters were native and many had traveled from different paths of the province in a march that became known as the Indian Child Caravan. The marchers were demonstrating their deep concern over the frequency with which provincial child welfare officials removed native children from their own families and placed them in non-native foster homes. The concerns here were not restricted to BC. In fact, this issue received increased attention across Canada. One of the organizers of the caravan was Wayne Christian, the chief of the Spalumcheen band in the south central region of the province. In an eloquent and emotional speech delivered in 1981 to a conference on Indian child welfare sponsored by the Canadian Indian Lawyers Association, Christian related some of the details of his own involvement with the child welfare system. Like many other Native children in the 60s and 70s, he was taken from his parents and placed in a non-Native foster home. He returned to the reserve at the age of 17. His siblings were also apprehended at the same time. A younger brother was sent to live with a different non-native family quite a distance away from the reserve. Christian's brother also returned to live on the reserve. His return was not easy. He had been much younger when removed from his family and community, and his recollection of the native way of life was not as strong as that of his older brother. He had also been unable to adapt to the non-native values and way of life in an urban setting. He struggled for so long with his cultural identity. Christian spoke of his own pain at recognizing that his brother was going through hell, torn between two cultures and not able to find a place in either. He felt virtually powerless to help. One night, Christian's mother told him she had a premonition that something was seriously wrong. The next morning, he found his brother dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Christian blames his brother's death on his treatment by the child welfare system. Yeah.
I guess so.
Yeah.
I would too.
Yep.
I do too.
Yes, we do too. Yeah. Through his involvement with others who joined the Indian Child Caravan, Chief Christian hoped to ensure that future generations of Native children will not have the same experiences he and his family had. The Spalumcheen band lost virtually an entire generation of its children to child welfare authorities. This experience was shared by many other Native bands across the country and explains why some people consider the child welfare system to be an agent of cultural genocide. Yes, we agree. That is a stance of Canadian Creepies. We completely agree with that.
If you've listened to anything we've ever talked about.
If you're listening and you're surprised we agree with that, this probably is not the podcast for you. It's fine. There's many other out there. May I suggest Joe Rogan?
Andrew Tate. Although, I don't know if he can get out from jail. He got apprehended
in those pantaloons of his.
And the very bright...
The loafers.
The very bright
purple V-neck.
The plunging V-neck.
Yeah, the plunging V.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's a memorable way to get arrested.
He was dressed like Lauren Conrad in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Lauren Conrad from the OC.
Yeah, yeah.
All he needed was just like a beach curl.
Yeah, that wasn't going to happen.
yeah, you can't do that.
His hair hates that man as much as everybody else does.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it flew the coop. Said, I'm out of here.
All right, so let's talk about how the parents fought back, because they did, and they did hard.
Yes, they did fight back despite what people say.
The tons of roadblocks that they faced as well. They were not discouraged from fighting back.
They were actively discouraged from fighting back, yeah. Okay.
The legal battle against the Canadian government for the 60s Scoop is a masterclass in resilience. For decades, the state relied on the fact that survivors were scattered, isolated, and stripped of their legal identities. The story of how they found each other, organized, and forced a historic multi-million-dollar settlement is a crucial and triumphant chapter of this story. Here is the deep dive into how the legal fight back happened, centered around the landmark Ontario Class Act lawsuit. So that happened here where we are recording.
Yeah.
To tell their story, we need our central figure, and that is Chief Marcia Brown Martell. Is
it Marcia or Marcia?
Marcia?
Marcia.
Marcia?
I would say Marcia.
I'll go with Marcia then.
Okay. Because that's how Marcia is spelt in the book The Outsiders.
That's a great book, too.
Yeah.
That is a great book, too.
Yeah.
And she is part of the Beaver House First Nations. Marcia was scooped in 1967 when she was just 5 years old. She was taken from her community, renamed Sally by her adoptive family, and shipped all the way to Texas.
That's so far.
Was it the last episode we were saying that they were shipped all over?
Yes, everywhere.
All over, from
Globally.
like to New Zealand even.
Yeah.
Like all over. And it's really hard to find your way back home at that point. Her identity was legally erased. When she finally made it back to Canada as a young adult, she discovered something horrifying. The government had declared her legally dead.
What?
Right?
Okay.
That's insane. That is an insane thing to do.
You moved her.
It was probably a way to stop her parents from trying to find her.
Yeah.
Straight up.
Straight up.
Marcy refused to be a ghost. She spent her years regaining her true name, establishing her identity, and eventually became the chief of her nation. Good for her. But she knew her story wasn't unique. In 2009, alongside legal heavyweight Michael Swinwood, she launched a class action lawsuit on behalf of Ontario's 60s Scoop survivors.
Yeah, good for her.
Finger snaps for her.
That's sign language for 8. That means you ate.
There you go.
That's why they do it.
You ate, girl. You ate.
That's right. That's why the kids do it.
Did you know that?
Yeah.
Now you know.
Yeah. You can't see what we're doing, but we're doing the forefinger to the thumb clappy thing.
Yeah.
Sign language for 8.
I dig that. I didn't know that.
That's why the kids do it.
Thank you for educating me.
You're welcome.
The younger generational language barriers.
I always said I don't want to be one of those older folks that doesn't know what's going on.
I mean, I know like skibbity. Yeah. 6, 7. The legal strategy here was groundbreaking and highly specific. Usually lawsuits against the government for child welfare failures focuses on physical or sexual abuse in foster homes. And FYI, just because it's not physical does not mean it wasn't abuse.
Yeah.
But the legal team realized that proving individual abuse for thousands of scattered children would take decades. So instead, they sued the government on a different profound premise: the loss of cultural identity.
Hey, that's a good one.
Very, very smart. The lawsuit argued that Canada had a fiduciary duty which means to legally obliged to act in the best interest of a vulnerable group, to protect the cultural identity of Indigenous children, which they did not do.
They did not do that.
By scooping them and placing them exclusively into non-Indigenous homes, the state committed cultural genocide. Oh, I like the terminology they're using here.
Yeah.
Vandalizing their souls by deliberately severing their connection to their language, land, and law. Shockingly, the Canadian government did not roll over. Christine inserts an eye roll here.
Yeah.
Right? She would.
Yep.
For nearly a decade, across both conservative and liberal administrations, state lawyers fought the lawsuit every single turn. The government spent years fighting just to stop the lawsuit from being certified as a class action. They argued that every child's experience was too different to be treated as one single group. When asked for documentation, the state frequently claimed that old child welfare reports were lost, destroyed, or just too difficult to retrieve, creating a massive bureaucratic wall for survivors trying to prove that they were ever even taken. After 8 years of grueling legal battles, the Ontario Supreme Court Justice Edward Bellobaba issued a historical ruling. He sided entirely with the survivors.
Hell yeah.
We like him. Bellobaba famously stated that the Canadian government had breached its duty and that impact on the child was devastating. He wrote that the state's actions left survivors with a, quote, complete loss of an ability to know who they were or where they came from. Not wrong, my friend, not wrong.
Yep.
Faced with total defeat in the Ontario court and mounting pressure across other provinces, the federal government finally blinked. In October of 2017, that was not that long ago.
That's literally not that long ago.
It's not even a full decade ago.
No.
Ottawa announced a national class action settlement valued around roughly $800 million. So the settlement breakdown went like this. There was $500 million that went to individual compensation. So it roughly worked out to $25,000 per survivor.
That's it?
That's it. That's it.
That's a joke.
There was $50 million that went to the Sixties Scoop Healing Foundation, and then the rest went to legal fees and administration costs.
Right.
The settlement was a historical victory, but many survivors and parents viewed it as bittersweet or even insulting. I mean, the individual payouts were capping at $25,000 per person. That wouldn't even pay for just your legal fees.
That's like hardly a down payment on a house.
That wouldn't pay for your therapy fees.
Yeah. No, yeah.
Right? Survivors pointed out that a single check could not buy back a stolen childhood, a lost language, or the decades of psychological trauma. The 2017 settlement only applied to status Indians and Inuit, and it entirely excluded Métis and non-status survivors, leaving thousands of victims out in the cold, forced to launch
there are a lot of people that aren't status.
Yeah. And they make it hard for you to not get, how do you prove where you came from when you were kidnapped from your home and placed in a different country?
Yeah.
Even.
Yeah.
Right? So because of this, it left thousands of victims out there in the cold and forced to launch their own separate legal battles that have dragged on for years. On one side, you have a massive cold clinical government machine with limitless money and lawyers. And on the other side, you have survivors who were told that they didn't exist, standing up in a courtroom holding hands and using the state's own laws to force an admission of guilt. Marcy Brown Martel summed up...
we decided Marcia.
Marcia Brown Martel summed up the ultimate victory perfectly. She said, "We were invisible. This lawsuit made us visible. They want us to disappear, but we are still here."
Still here.
She ate with that, too.
Yes, she did. Truth and Reconciliation. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada.
That was a good one.
The Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada, or the TRC, was not a government initiative. It was born out of the Indian Residential School Settlement Agreement in 2007, the largest class action settlement in Canadian history, forced by the resilience of residential school survivors. Led by Chair Justice Murray Sinclair, alongside Chief Wilton Littlechild and Dr. Marie Wilson, the commission spent 6 years traveling across the country, gathering over 6,500 testimonies from survivors and witnesses, and reviewing over 5 million government and church records. When the Truth and Reconciliation Commission released its multi-volume final report in December of 2015, it did not pull punches. It explicitly labeled the Indian residential school system as an act of cultural genocide. The Commission defined the cultural genocide as the deliberate destruction of the political, social, and cultural structures that allow a group of people to continue to exist as a group. The report detailed how the state seized Indigenous lands and restricted movement, banned Indigenous languages and persecuted spiritual leaders, forcibly transferred populations and disrupted families to prevent the transmission of cultural values and identity from one generation to the next.
Do you imagine if there was a bunch of we come over here and a bunch of Indigenous people started barging into our churches and being like, you spiritual leaders.
No way.
Yeah, we would shit people would ship bricks and be up in arms.
Yeah.
This is no different.
If you're looking to learn more from Indigenous voices, I'd love to recommend 3 incredible podcasts. All My Relations, hosted by Matika Wilbur and Tamara Slane, explores Indigenous relationships to land, community, culture, and one another through thoughtful conversations that are honest, funny, and deeply moving. One Dish, One Mic, created by Carl Dockstader of the Oneida Nation and Sean Vanderklis, a member of Curve Lake First Nation, shines a light on Indigenous stories, issues, and community conversations with insight and heart. And Relentless Indigenous Woman, hosted by Dr. Candice Manitopes of Moose Cree First Nation, brings powerful discussions on Indigenous leadership, sovereignty, resilience, and reclaiming space. If you enjoy Canadian Creepies and want to deepen your understanding of Indigenous perspectives, these are a fantastic place to start. Let's take a moment during this break to talk about something that matters, something that doesn't get to be background noise. The Anishinaabe-Moan word, Nikinagana, means we are all related, and we are, but relationship isn't just about words, it's about responsibility. Canadian author Naomi Klein once said, "It is not enough to say that we live on Indigenous land. We have to act as if we do." And one way to do that is by supporting Pay Your Rent, a grassroots mutual aid initiative that offers direct material support to Indigenous organizers across this land. It's not charity, it's rent. For those of us who aren't Indigenous to this place, it's a way to show up differently, to redistribute some of what's been taken. The Pay Your Rent Fund started as a one-time request for help in 2018 and grew into a nonprofit called Nikinagana. Your monthly or one-time donation can help provide food, hygiene supplies, housing support, and resources for Indigenous-led resistance and community care. So if you've ever said, "We're all related," ask yourself, are you being a good relative? Visit payyourrent.ca and find out more about how you can be part of something better. Now, back to this case. Justice Murray Sinclair said, "Getting to the truth was hard, but getting to reconciliation will be harder. Reconciliation is not an Aboriginal problem, it is a Canadian one." Hear, hear. To ensure the final report didn't simply sit on a shelf gathering dust, the TRC delivered 94 calls to action. These are concrete, actionable directives aimed at redressing the legacy of residential schools and establishing a new framework of mutual respect. The 94 calls are split cleanly into 2 distinct categories. The first being legacy, calls 1 to 42. These focus on fixing the ongoing structural damage caused by centuries of assimilation policies. They target deep-rooted systemic crises in 5 major areas. Child welfare, stopping the Millennium Scoop by reducing the number of Indigenous children in foster care and raising social workers are ensuring. Sorry, I was like, erasing doesn't make sense. You should have corrected me.
I'm sorry.
The number of Indigenous...
I was sitting there being like, trying to figure out what you were actually going to say for a second there. I was like, where's she going with this?
You can't correct me because you just trust me so much. Not saying I don't trust you. Now I'm digging a hole again.
My own mind works differently than your mind, where I'm like, what is she? She's getting there.
I'm like, tundra. Okay, I'm going to start the sentence again. Child welfare, stopping the Millennium Scoop by reducing the number of Indigenous children in foster care and ensuring social workers are culturally trained. Education, closing the funding gap between on-reserve and off-reserve schools and integrating Indigenous history into Canadian curricula.
Yes.
Language and culture, formally protecting language rights and establishing an Indigenous Languages Act. Health, recognizing the distinct health needs of Indigenous communities and requiring medical students to take courses on systemic racism and history. Yes, I'm like loving all of this. I'm not loving this, but you know what I mean.
I'm not loving the fact that this is what we are having to fight for, but I'm loving everything that they're saying should be included in teaching and the society.
Yes. And justice, addressing the massive open representation of Indigenous, the massive overrepresentation of Indigenous peoples in the Canadian prison system. The second part is reconciliation, calls 43 to 94. These look outward, demanding that all levels of Canadian society change how they operate moving forward. This includes enacting the United Nations Declaration of Rights of Indigenous Peoples, reforming corporate policies to ensure meaningful consultation and economic benefits for Indigenous nations regarding resource development on their lands.
Give them drinking water.
Right? Establishing permanent statutory holidays, archives, and educational mandates for journalism, sports, law, and business sectors. Yes.
Like, we have the Truth and Reconciliation, but that is for, like, something just for them.
Yeah.
To recognize their celebrated.
Yes.
You know, like, whatever they celebrate, give them the day off.
Yeah.
Without a fight.
Yeah. The legacy of the TRC continues to evolve, serving as a live benchmark for tracking accountability across Canadian institutions. In 2015, there was the creation of the National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation in Winnipeg to house the permanent secure public archive of survivor stories. In 2019, Bill C-91, the Indigenous Languages Act, received royal assent to fund, revitalize, and protect endangered languages. In 2020, Bill C-92 came into force, legally restoring jurisdiction over child and family services back to Indigenous governing bodies, directly targeting the mechanics of child welfare apprehensions. And in 2021, Bill C-5 established September 30th as the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, or Orange Shirt Day, as a federal statutory holiday. The residential schools The residential schools were the mechanism used to break the parents. The Scoop was the mechanism used to scatter the children, and the TRC was the hard-fought forum where survivors finally broke the silence to write their own history.
And I can't remember the exact stats, but we did talk about it in the last summer's series about the Truth and Reconciliation and their calls to action. I think out of those 94, 12 of them have been done so far.
Yeah, it's something stupid like that.
I just felt that was really important to kind of highlight because it's there. We've all agreed. The government has agreed. Yes, let's do this. And they have not done it. They have not done it.
They have not done it.
All right. Let's talk about the Millennial Scoop. So the lemma, off to a great start as well. The Millennium Scoop is a term coined by Indigenous advocates, lawyers, and social scientists to describe a staggering modern reality. There are more Indigenous children separated from their families and placed into the Canadian child welfare systems today than at the absolute height of the residential school system. Let that sink in. More now than during the residential schools, which we have been talking about for going on 3 years.
Yes. Here's season 3 coming up.
Yeah. Nothing has been done yet.
Nothing.
It's called the Millennium Scoop because it describes the massive ongoing crisis that began around the turn of the century, the year 2000, and continues to right now, our year 2026, if you're listening to this.
In 2028? Sorry, it was 2 years ago.
Yeah. So, whenever you're listening to this, this is when we recorded.
Yes.
To understand why it is referred to as the Scoop, you have to look at the data collected by Statistics Canada and the federal census reports over the last decade. In Canada, Indigenous children make up only about 7 to 8% of the total child population under the age of 14. However, they represent over 53% of all children in foster care nationwide. That's an insane discrepancy. Mm-hmm. In certain provinces, the numbers mirror the total systemic collapse. In Manitoba and Saskatchewan, up to 85 to 90% of all children in the provincial foster care system are Indigenous.
Wow.
How do you have almost 100% of the children in foster care
be Indigenous when it's only 7 to 8% of the total population. Yeah, that's fucked up.
That's like, I have no words.
No.
That's
fucked up.
That's insane.
Yeah.
At the absolute peak of the residential school system, which was around the 1930s to 1940s, there were roughly 10 to 12,000 children in the schools at any given time. Today, there is estimated to be, sorry, my throat, over 30,000 Indigenous children living under the custody of the foster care system, triple the number of the residential school era.
Wow.
That's no bueno.
No bueno.
The mechanism of the Millennium Scoop relies on the exact same structural biases that fueled the 1920 mandatory attendance laws and the 1960s provincial dragnets. The system has simply swapped out overt racial terminology for clinical bureaucratic jargon. Just like the social workers of the 1960s, modern child welfare agencies frequently confuse structural poverty with parental neglect. And it's not their fault if they don't have clean drinking water. That's the government.
That's completely out of their hands.
Yes. If you don't like them, even give them clean drinking water, or move them to a place that does, where they can, like, not that they should have to rebuild their systems.
Not relocating.
Like, just fucking, I'm so
we don't have the solutions.
We don't, no. Clearly our government doesn't want solutions either.
No.
This is why the Indian Act existed.
That's right.
Sorry, I lost my place there. Okay. Due to the decades of the state-engineered economic starvation under the Indian Act, many reserves faced severe housing crises, boil water advisories, and food insecurity. If a home is overcrowded or lacks adequate resources, agencies step in and apprehend the child or children for neglect rather than providing the family with financial or structural support to fix the living conditions.
Which would be easier and cheaper.
It would be so much easier and
give
cheaper.
Give people what they need to have fucking comfortable homes.
You're going to end up giving those families that have adopted or are in foster care money to take care of those kids as it is.
Yeah, and you're just giving people who already have money more money.
It's a very nasty, frustrating cycle.
Or giving people who are in such a vulnerable state that they're exploiting kids for money. Like, it's just not...
Yeah.
Anyway.
Up until very recently, and with ongoing systemic remnants, hospitals across Canada practice what is called birth alerts. We talked a little bit about this earlier. If a provincial social worker flagged an expectant Indigenous mother, often based on subjective historical family files, the hospital would automatically notify child welfare the moment she goes into labor. So this baby isn't even born yet.
And they're already they've already
decided they're taking this baby.
Yeah.
Social workers would walk into the maternity ward and seize a newborn baby directly from the mother's chest, hours after birth, before any neglect could even possibly occur. Child welfare agencies and private group homes receive massive per capita provincial funding allocations to housing and managing children in care.
Just give the money to parents to take care of their fucking kids. This is what I'm
saying, right? Critics point out that the state will readily pay thousands of dollars per month to a non-Indigenous foster family to house a child, but will refuse to provide even a fraction of that money directly to the child's birth mother and grandmother to help them buy groceries or even fix a broken roof. And you don't even want them buying groceries.
Yeah.
You're just like the whole point is you want them to buy groceries. You don't want them eating like dried game so it's such an easy problem to fix.
Yeah, they don't want to fix. They don't want to fix
it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Because racism.
Yeah.
This whole episode gets me worked up. Yeah. This whole series has got me worked up.
Yeah.
The modern area of the Millennium Scoop is defined by an intense, ongoing legal battle for sovereignty. In 2020, the federal government passed Bill C-92, an act respecting First Nations, Inuit, and Métis, children, families, and youth. This legal This legislation finally recognizes that Indigenous nations have an inherent constitutional right to run their own children and family services. Yes!
Exactly.
It allows communities to draft their own laws, meaning if a child's family is in crisis, the community, not a provincial worker, takes control, focusing on keeping the child inside their culture, language, and extended family network.
That was provincial social worker, yes.
Yes. However, provincial governments have routinely fought these jurisdictional shifts in court, delaying the transfer of power and keeping the foster care machinery running. Like, why?
It's money.
Why?
Because it's money.
If you think the horrors that we've talked about in this season are a dark chapter locked away in the history book, you're dead wrong. The names have changed, the buildings have changed, but the math stays exactly the same. In 1920s, it was a priest and an Indian agent breaking down the door. In the 1960s, it was a provincial social worker scooping babies into the back of a car. Today, in 2026, it's a birth alert in a modern hospital room and an algorithm flagging a family because they are surviving the poverty this country intentionally trapped them in. The structural legacy of the Millennium Scoop proves that the assimilation machine built over a century ago is incredibly stubborn. It has shifted shapes, changed its vocabulary, and embedded itself deeper within our modern institutions. But if this history teaches us anything, it is that the machine underestimates a fundamental truth. You cannot permanently erase a people who carry the resistance of generations in resilience of generations in their very DNA. They are. Mm-hmm. From the courts where Chief Brown Martella demanded visibility to the grassroots circles where survivors are reclaiming their language, their traditional ceremonies, and their true names, Indigenous peoples are actively reclaiming their sovereignty. The true horror was the state's attempt to vandalize the soul of an entire culture by stealing their future. But the real ending to the story isn't one of total erasure. It's one of a fierce, unbroken resistance. The systemic cages are still being fought every single day, but as survivors continue to guide each other back to the land, back to the drum, and back to their families, they are proving that the ties that bind them to their ancestry can be stretched, but they can never be broken.
Nope.
That's
the end of the series. I can't talk about it anymore.
Yeah, it's so frustrating.
It's frustrating and tiresome. And sad. And I'm white, so.
And I feel powerless to be able to really help aside from.
Well, because sometimes we don't have, I know, but like white women love to think we have to help.
I know.
We don't. We just have to listen. I think we just have to like do what we're doing.
Spread awareness. I think that's, especially if you.
We're not speaking for anybody either. We're like, I think what we're doing
is saying,
here's the facts.
And if you look at things online, I think that's part of the responses people give in anything. A lot of it is ignorance, and it's not all willful ignorance. We're just not taught this shit.
Yeah. We're just not taught. And some of it's so like sad and bad. You're like, this can't possibly be true, but it is. It is possibly true. It is true. Okay. I can't. So this is Radio Valerie on Facebook and YouTube, Canadian Creepies on Instagram, but also Radio Valerie's on Instagram. You can follow us wherever.
All over. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook.
She's down the crooked path.
Down the crooked path.
She forgot that part.
I was speaking for both of us, but, you know.
You can follow us everywhere. This has been the 60s Scoop. It sucks.
It's devastating, and it's ongoing. That's what makes it so horrific. Is it's ongoing.
It hasn't stopped. So birth alerts, suggesting midwives to everyone.
Yes.
Yeah. So don't let the bed creeps bite.
Creep you later.